Hey you guys, I'm Tashina,
I'm Portia.
and this is the Dark Side of Human. So today we're going to be discussing the case of three 8-year-old boys that got murdered and three teenage boys
That were
that
convicted.
convicted of their murder, which we don't think they did it. So, 6 lives
But
was
over.
just ruined. So that's the story that we're going to get into. So let's get started. So on May 5th, 1993, three little boys, Christopher Byers, Stevie Branch, and Michael Moore, all went out to go play, to go ride their bikes after school, and they never returned home. So let's talk about the boys first. Okay, so Stevie Branch, he was born November 26th. Don't mind me looking. I got to get the dates right. 1984. His mom was Pam Branch, and his stepdad was Terry Hobbs. Then we have Christopher Byers. He was born June 23rd, 1984. His mom was Melissa Deff, and his adoptive father was John Mark Byers. Michael Moore was born July 27, 1984. His mom and dad was Todd and Diane Moore. Stevie, Michael, and Chris were best friends. They all went to the same school. They all were in Cub Scouts together. Little Stevie was described as a little heartbreaker of the group with his little. He had really blonde, white, almost blonde hair and blue eyes, and
If you've seen one, it was rare that you didn't see all of them.
Yeah, and he loved Ninja Turtles. He taught himself front and back flips. And he loved to sing. His mom said he was going to be her little Elvis one day. And Chris, he loved to swim. He was very inquisitive. They said he just asked questions after questions after questions. He wanted to know everything. He loved to swim. He loved to, ride their bikes and play. And
they were all very active.
Yeah, and then Michael Moore, he was the leader of the group. He said they said he's the one that led the group. And he always wore his Cub Scout uniform, even when there wasn't a meeting.
He was proud of his Cub Scout.
That's all you would see him. He was in his Cub Scout uniform. So I got a little timeline of the day that they went missing. So on May 5th, the boys got out of school at 3 o'clock. Stevie Branch got out of school a little earlier. His mom and little sister came and picked him up around 2:45, and they walked home. Around 3:15, that's when Michael Moore came to the door, knocked on the door, asked if Stevie can come out and ride his bike. He asked his mom. His mom said, yes, but I need you back here by 4:30 because I got to go to work at 5. And if you're not here back by 4:30, I'm going to ground you for like 2 weeks. So they were like, okay, we'll be back. I promise I'll see you later. So they left. Around 3:30, around 3:30, 5, that's when Chris came to the door, but the boys were already gone. So he ended up staying there for a little while with Stevie's sister, Amanda, watching Muppet Babies. You remember Muppet Babies?
Yes.
So
I ain't that young.
So he stayed there a little while and watched, the Muppet Babies. So after that, he left. So neighbors were spotting these boys. So like 5:30, around 4:30,
they were seen all around the neighborhood. And
neighbors said they seen the boys out their window. It was strange to me because even around 6 o'clock, they said that the boys were at a neighbor's house about one house down from Stevie's house. And they even heard Stevie's stepfather calling for them.
Yeah.
They come in the house. So I'm like,
Stevie's stepfather said he gave Stevie a whooping.
That was Chris.
Oh, that was Chris?
Yeah. So Chris
he said he gave him a whooping at like 6.
Yeah, Chris didn't catch up with the boys until later on. So he was caught by his stepdad riding down the street on his skateboard on his stomach. On his stomach. So his dad got him, took him home, whooped him, told him, you need to clean this carport out, and you better not leave till don't leave till I get home. Of course, the little boy, he didn't listen. As soon as the dad left, he left. And that's when they met up. So it was strange to me, like these boys were spotted. I thought, before I dug deep into this case, I thought they went out and ride their bikes and just went missing.
That's what I thought at first too.
But when I was reading this, they were all through the neighborhood. They were last seen.
Multiple people seen them
So if Terry,
all day.
Why couldn't he find the boys? If they're all through the neighborhood, why did stepdad couldn't find? That's what kind of
From day one, the stepdad was suspect to me.
Yeah.
I know what they say, like you can't. Everybody deals with like guilt and stuff differently, but it's just like,
yeah,
some of the stuff he was doing was very irate, and it was kind of like, are you trying to act as angry to shift the attention from you and put it on them? Because he just started full on rage.
Yeah. And so they were last spotted at 7 o'clock. That's the last time the boys were spotted. It was by a band that left night school. And he said he's seen the 3 little boys go into Robin Hood Hills. That's the last they were seen. Chris's dad was the first one that reported the boy missing. His adopted dad. He never returned home from dinner, so he reported the boy missing. Once he reported the boy missing, the other parents came and said that their 2 boys were missing.
The kids were missing.
So that first night, cops didn't do a really good search. They didn't.
Even though we know the first 24 hours are critical.
Yeah. They didn't do a really good search. Now the friends and family and neighbors all got around and they were searching. They even searched the area where they found the boy's body at. But they were not found that night. They were not found that night. So 8 o'clock in the next morning, that's when the search, they really deep in the search. Place. So they searched everywhere in Cretan County. I hope I'm saying that right. But they really focused on Robin Hood Hills because that's where the boys were last spotted. So even though they had a shorter, like they were just in there looking, they did not find anything. No, but around 1:45,
no evidence,
nothing. Around 1:45, there was a parole officer. He was, doing his searches, and he seen a little boy's black shoe floating in the river or the creek or whatever. So he goes down there and looks, and that's when the boys' bodies were discovered. They were all under the water. When they pulled the boys out, they were hogtied with their own shoelaces. They were naked, hogtied.
With their own shoelaces.
Yeah, with their own shoelaces.
That is an important fact.
Their clothes was all found in the creek. It was all wrapped around branches and stuff. But only 1 pair of underwears were ever found. Yeah. 2 pair of underwears was never found. So the injuries that the boys had, stab wounds, blunt force trauma, and one, I don't know, they focused on Chris Byers. He was mutilated in his private parts.
His private was, skin?
Yeah.
And then his testicles were taken off.
Were removed.
Yes.
So, and the other, his cause of death was from his injuries. The other 2 boys, Michael and Stevie, they had injuries also, but their cause of death was drowning. Yeah, that's. But the thing is, there's no blood.
None.
There was no blood at the scene, and the injuries that they had, there would be blood. There was no physical evidence at the scene at all. So, what does that tell you?
And
they weren't killed there.
Blood does seep in to the ground and stuff, but you would still find some type of traces of their blood and stuff around. There was nothing found. There were no evidence around.
No physical evidence.
No physical evidence at all.
So after that got out, there was a parole officer named, his last name is Driver. He automatically says that this is a satanic killing, right?
But let's give some backstory on that. This is a time where it was a satanic panic.
Yeah,
everything was the devil. Yeah. Everything was you're a devil worshiper or this, that, anything. It had people scared. Like, just, they blamed everything. And then everything had hidden messages too.
Yeah. Like,
now, it could be true, but
it was everything. Because satanic panic at that time, you couldn't watch the Smurfs.
Yeah,
you couldn't watch like certain things because the Smurfs, the Smurfs did a little witchcraft or whatever. But yeah, so he automatically, that was satanic, occult, whatever. Even though there was no artifacts, there was no symbols, there was like nothing even pointing to a satanic, cult did that. But he had a parolee that his name was Damien Eccles. And of course, he had long black hair. He wore black. He painted his nails. He listened to heavy metal, and he was into Wicca. That was his religion. He was into Wicca. And this parole officer, he just knew that Damien had something to do with
it. And then they assumed Wicca was evil.
Yeah, it's actually
now there's more learned about Wicca. It's not what a lot of people think. It's not like drinking blood and stuff like that. It's just a different way a different religion view, I guess.
Yeah, it's more they just believe in the earth. It's more earth and the stuff like that. But anyway, so he just knew it was. So he went and gave his concerns to the West Memphis police. So of course they, went straight to Damien, and he had a friend named Jason Baldwin. Same thing. He had long hair, into heavy metal, wore black. They were both like outcasts. They just hung out with each other. And the other one was Jesse Kelly.
Kelly.
He knew the boys, but he never really hung out with the boys. Like they knew of each other or whatever, but he never hung out. So,
and to give the police, I don't want to say the benefit of the doubt, but they were under pressure from the community to find who did these to the kids. So they were just trying to find somebody, and they were trying to make things fit.
Yeah. So and there's this lady, Victoria. She volunteers to help the police. Now, some of the documentaries and movies that I watch, she did this because I guess she was going to get her kids taken away. It was something happening.
It was
going to get in trouble.
Quid pro quo for sure.
Yeah. So she knew Jesse. Like she didn't know Jason or Damien, but she knew Jesse. Jesse babysitted for her sometimes. So she went to Jesse, of course, and was like, "Oh, you know Damien, and you know Jason. Can you introduce me to Damien? I want to get to know him or whatever." So Jesse goes and he, introduces. Well, this is what she says, but I don't think this happened. This is what she says. So this is what she says.
How y'all gonna be recording with the door on it?
What?
It was unlocked.
No, we ran with the door.
Oh, we good.
Oh, we're fine. So, anyways, she meets Damien. This is what she tells the police. Jesse introduced her to Damien. She asked Damien, "Can you take me to one of your witchcraft meetings or whatever?" So her, Jesse, and Damien goes to this witchcraft thing, and she said there was dancing naked and by the fire, and they was drinking blood and all this other stuff she was saying happened.
None of this was proven.
None of it.
There's no evidence of this either. And again, we do feel sorry for these children, but we just giving our point of view. We're not trying to downplay what these boys went through.
Yeah.
But a lot of this shit was fabricated.
So that's what he tells her. That's what she tells the police. So after that, they pick up Jesse. They take him to the station, and they start questioning him. They question him for hours. But get this, they only recorded about 30, 45 minutes of it.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
They didn't take no notes.
No notes
before,
no
nothing.
recording. So we don't know what was said, what they were saying to him, were they bullying him, were they yelling at him, whatever. But at the end of this interview, he confessed and he implicated himself, Damien, and Jason. Even though his confession
did not match
literally,
what
he
happened.
said it happened at 12 o'clock. The cops said it can't happen at 12 o'clock. The boys were at school. So, I mean, it was so inconsistent. He was contradicting what he was saying. He said they were hogtied with a rope. If you were there, you would know the details of what happened.
I feel like, too, there was question of his IQ.
Yeah, he was.
And we've seen in many interrogations, when the suspect in question has a low IQ, they'll say anything to get you out their face. There have been so many false confessions. Yeah. And then I don't understand the police tactic with this questioning for hours. And again, this is a teenager. Yeah. He's like, I want to get out of here, but I feel like certain stuff the police shouldn't be able to do because people give these false confessions.
And the fact that it was only recorded, like,
Why
how is
did
this
it
even
record 30
allowed?
minutes?
I wouldn't even think that
That should have been thrown out.
it shouldn't even be allowed because we don't know what they were. And he was probably at the point was like, I just want to get out of here. I'm gonna tell them what they want to hear, and they'll let me go home. And that's what cops kind of give you the idea of what will happen. If you just tell me what I want to hear, then you can go
home.
So I
and they be saying that to these kids too.
So even though this interview was, or this confession was just everywhere, all over the place, they literally had to kind of lead him.
And he has never said this again. Like, he's never said they did it again.
He's never spoken it.
He was even offered a lower time if he went against the other boys.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah, I can't lie.
So after that, of course, they went and arrested Damien, Jason, and Jesse. And right after, when Jesse got arrested, he recanted. He recanted his confession. He was like, I was confused. The way the cops were pressuring me, I was confused. I just wanted to cooperate. I just wanted to help them. But he recanted. He said that it was not true. None of that happened. In the way that he implicated himself, he said he was standing there watching, and one of the little boys, Michael, ran away. And he chased him, grabbed the little boy, and brought him back, and then he left. That's what he said. So, with all that, even though he recanted it, they still charged the boys with the murder of Stevie, Chris, and Michael. So they're getting ready for the trial. Since Jesse confessed, his trial was separate from
Damien
and
Jesse
and Jason. So
Jesse.
It's Jesse and Jason. So Jesse's trial was January 26, 1994, and Damien's and Jason's was a month later in February 28th. So the evidence that they had was so circumstantial. I'm talking about so circumstantial. All they had was they had a satanic cult expert. They say, oh, they were black. They listen to heavy metal. Yeah, that they're in the cult. And they have little witnesses from children saying, oh yeah, we heard Damien say that he killed him and he's killing 2 more.
The thing with that is they couldn't tell you what he said before.
No,
they couldn't tell you what he said after. They couldn't even tell you where they were to hear Damien say what he said.
Yeah.
So it's like
it was so circumstantial. Everything was just so circumstantial. And it was my thing is the boys being spotted. So nobody spotted Damien. Nobody spotted Jason. Near them. Wouldn't you think you would see them somewhere around the boys, walking with the boys, being seen with the boys? They weren't even seen ever with these boys. So I don't understand just because they were black and they think it's a satanic. They really, I would say framed, but they put it on these boys.
And a lot of the evidence and stuff to me it was tainted. They put in the newspaper that the boys drowned. They put in the newspaper that the boys were stabbed. This is before the trial. I feel like the trial was tainted from day one because if anybody who can read the newspaper, if they're going to be a juror, these boys are already guilty before you walk through the door.
So when the defense lawyer was doing his, getting ready for trial and stuff, he found that, so there was a couple leads that the cops had that they never pursued. Chris Byers' dad gave a knife to one of the people that are doing the documentary. So HBO was there filming the trial for the Paradise Lost. He gave the knife to one of the crew members as a gift. It had blood on it. So as soon as he seen it, he was like, oh. So he gave it to the cops. The cops did test it. It had his blood and Chris's blood on it. But they never pursued that lead. They
did ask him though.
They asked him.
The cops questioned him on the night before he gave the cops the knife. No, after they questioned him. Yeah, they questioned him. They said, "Is there any possible way human blood is on this knife?" He said no. Is there any possible way that Chris's blood is on his wife on this knife? He said no. Is there any way your blood is on this knife? He said no. I don't use that knife. It's in my drawer. I don't use it because it has ridges. Yeah. So then when they put him on trial, on the stand, then he's like, oh yeah, I cut it to use fish and to clean my toenails and stuff like this.
Or venison or whatever.
Or whatever.
Then he said he cut his thumb, and then they're like, they had what he said
What he
written
said
down.
word
Then he
for
was like,
word.
oh, maybe I remember later.
Maybe they,
and then I
yeah,
talked
they
to him
worded it
later about
different.
it. Yeah. So, but they never pursued. They never really. They talked to boom, whatever. They never
They
pursued.
had other leads of other suspects.
And then they had one the night the boys went missing
Mhm.
at Mr. Bojangles. It's a local restaurant. A black man walks into the restaurant covered in mud, like from his ankle up to his knees, like
and he also had blood.
covered in mud and blood. He was disoriented. He was smearing blood all over the walls. He went into the women's restroom and just sat there. So they called the cops. It was a lady cop came up and was just. She didn't even go in the restaurant.
Inside. She went through the drive-thru and talked to
and
people.
she was like, "Where did he, head or whatever?" So he went that way. So she was like, "I'm gonna go see if I can find him." They're like, "You're not even gonna come in the restaurant?"
She said no.
So the next day the cops
She didn't even write a report.
No, the next day the cops did come in. They took a sample of the blood. They never ran it. They lost.
They lost
the blood sample. So who to say that wasn't the boy's blood, or whatever?
And he was covered in mud. The boys were
from his ankle to his knees, like that he was walking in the mud. That they just knew they had. They just knew that they had these boys. They just knew right away that they weren't looking anywhere else. So of course, all three boys got convicted. Jesse and Jason got life, and Damien got the death penalty. He got 3 counts of capital murder.
But with what's his name? The one that the confession. Jesse. They went to the family members of the 3 boys that life was taken and was like, "Hey, can we give Jesse a deal so he can turn on the other 2, so we can make sure the other 2 go to jail, because we really don't got a lot of proof."
Oh yeah, they wanted him to confess.
So the family was like, whatever, as long as they go to jail for at least like 20 years, go for it. So the police went to Jesse and was like, "Yo, we'll let you out sooner if you just roll on the other 2. Tell that they did this.
Testify
against them." But he said
he never spoke. Like Portia said earlier, he never spoke that confession again. And he never said those words again.
It got to the point where they went to, because he got convicted before the other 2 boys.
Yeah,
it's like some months. It got to the point where they were visiting him so much, he wanted to be like in solitary so they couldn't come visit, because he was scared of them. He said they kept threatening him and stuff like that to testify against the other 2, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so of course after the trial they tried to appeal, and the appeals kept they kept denying the appeals or whatever. But the case that the cops built started to fall apart. So Vicky, remember Vicky, the one that wanted to volunteer to help, she said she committed perjury on the stand because she lied. She was saying what the cops told her to say.
Yeah.
And then there was the foreman of the jury. He was discussing the case at length with his attorney. Now that's a no-no. When you're on an active trial and you're in a jury, you can't discuss the trial with nobody. And then, get this, they found DNA at the scene where the boys were killed, and it matched Stevie's stepdad, Terry Hobbs. So with all of this, they were able to get a hearing. So Damien, he hired a whole nother defense team. He was like, "I'm not messing with the defense team that we have." So he hired a whole nother defense team. Once the defense started going through, looking through this evidence and stuff, they realized it's not much for us to get them exonerated. It's not. It just worried them. They really didn't want to go and risk.
Go back to trial.
Yeah, they didn't want to risk a new trial with what they had, because it really wasn't pointing to a different suspect. It
wasn't pointing to nobody.
It wasn't pointing. So it's like they did not want to risk it. So there's an Alford plea that all 3 of them.
But it was all or nothing.
Yeah, so
either all of them took it.
Yeah, all 3 of them
or none of them took it.
So they have to plead guilty to lesser charges while still saying they're innocent, and they're just doing this.
And they'll get out on time served
for their best. First, Jason Baldwin didn't want to do it.
No.
He didn't want to, because he just did not want to confess to something that he didn't do. He didn't want to plead guilty to something that he didn't do, especially that kind of crime. Like, you don't want to plead guilty. But Damien's
he's about to get the
his execution date was coming up fast.
In a month?
Yeah, so
Yeah, within that month.
So Jason decided, okay, we'll do it. So all three boys did the out for plea. They got out, time served, 18 years.
But they still
And they
still say that they're innocent, and they're
Yeah.
still trying to fight to get their names cleared.
and they didn't get compensated for, because they were basically, they're still guilty in the eyes of the law. And it's what makes that even sad. Nobody's looking into this case. The prosecutors not looking into the case of who killed Chris, Stevie, and Michael, because they feel like they got who killed him. And it's just really sad that these little boys are not getting any justice. And I feel too with this case, which is sad, they kind of got lost in it all, because everybody's worrying about these three boys that are getting. And I get it, because after the Paradise Lost came out, I mean, tons of people came, because I watched the second one. Tons of people came, started groups trying to get these boys out, had T-shirts of them,
But the innocence of the three got lost. Of the three babies got lost.
Like the Memphis Three, the
Yeah.
case was just about them, and you're not worrying about these poor babies.
6 lives were ruined.
Yeah, but these poor
3
babies.
lives they were trying to redeem.
Yeah, and then
the other 3 just got lost.
And what they went through, and then what their family's going through, and Chris's dad, this man, even though he's weird, I just feel like he didn't have nothing to do with it. But he was so, when the cameras were on in the documentary I watched, he was so weird.
That's one with the brain tumor?
Yeah, the one with the long hair, when he was the
I
forest.
started thinking he did it.
But then I just did
There was a point in time where I really thought he did it because, he didn't want them to look for evidence. He was just
because
it was them.
Because they all wanted to say, all believed it was the devil. They all believed it was Satan.
Even with me, I don't know, I can't say that because I don't have any kids.
Yeah.
But I would want to be for sure you did it.
Well, because
I would still be like, lock him up.
Yeah.
But make sure he can't get out.
Yeah. Because Stevie's mom, when she was there during the trial, when the defense was talking about how the inconsistencies of what Jesse was saying, she was like, how did he not remember? How does he not know this information? How does he not know that it's not a rope, it was a shoelace? She started having doubts that it was them. They even said she kind of suspected her husband too.
Because there's one with the tumor, right?
Which one had the tumor?
The one with your dude.
No, this is Terry Hobbs. The mom's a blonde lady.
For some reason, I keep getting it.
Yeah, so she kind of suspected her husband.
He was the last one to see them.
Cause that's what gets me with this timeline. Cause like I said, when I thought the boys got on their bikes and just disappeared. But the fact that they were seen all the way from, they left that house at 3:30. They was last seen at 7 o'clock. They were so close. Even the dad got Chris, and they heard, they were one house away from Stevie's house. They heard Terry calling Stevie. Why weren't the boys found? Why wouldn't he just walk around the thing and bring the boys home? You know what I mean? So that's what makes me believe that he did. I believe this is my opinion. I believe he called them boys. All 3 boys went when Terry called them, and he did what he did. And then later on, them bodies were placed there later on.
Yeah, they did a search and they weren't there.
No, them bodies were placed later on there because it wasn't there. They weren't killed there. They was just placed there.
I got some comments about the trial because with me, I like to watch the trials and read the trial transcripts and stuff. That's what I be doing. So during the trial, honestly, I'm not trying to diss nobody. I don't understand how these jurors, though, how could it not been a mistrial of anything? It should have been a mistrial because there was no facts. There was no, even their witnesses were trash.
And there were little kids that probably the cops.
No, I'm talking about the professional witnesses.
Oh yeah. And
one who said that Damien did it because he had a book.
Yeah.
That was he had some book or whatever, and then he was like in that book.
It's about child sacrifice.
It's talking about child sacrifice and all this other stuff.
And then the witness that
But
they
Damien
had
was like, that book I got it for 10 cents at the library,
Yeah.
and it wasn't my notes in it. And then the defense was like, okay, it's not his handwriting in this book, so it's not his writing in that book. And he was like, I just picked it up for 10 cents. And then because he likes Stephen King, they're like, oh yeah, you for sure knew how to do it. But my whole thing is, there was a doctor expert witness that was like, I couldn't even surgically like cut somebody like that if I'm in a OR.
Yeah.
So whoever did this, he was like, I imagine it'll be hard. Like 3 teenagers couldn't have done it in an hour, is
Yeah.
what he was saying. Like, and then just the lawyers, like body languages and stuff like that. It was very, I don't know, it was very like, it wasn't professional. And it was, I know lawyers have to like press you, but some of the stuff they were doing was just like distasteful. And I was just like, this. If I would have been a juror, I would have seen you're being this rude and this, you're doing all this extra stuff to hide. There's no physical evidence.
No.
And it's like, I don't get how that wasn't seen through.
Yeah.
And I feel like the defense raised a lot of questions that it should have been some reasonable doubt there.
Yeah.
Like they raised the issue that they asked the police officer, well, when this guy was bloody and muddy, why he didn't make a report? I don't know.
And there was certain evidence that the defense was not allowed to present.
Yeah.
So there is a guy named Chris, another teenage boy, that he up and left the day after the boys went missing. He up and moved. They found where he was at, talked to him. He confessed. But that wasn't allowed to be presented. They could not present that.
It's crazy how like one confession was good enough, but one wasn't.
Yeah.
And then also, there was a boy that was in prison with the boys, and he lied and said, "Oh yeah, one of the boys confessed to me," but his counselor was like, "He knew that because I told him."
Yeah.
But they're like, they couldn't use the counselor's word because he was a counselor, and that's confidential. So they couldn't even use that. He told the boy all of this, you know.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of stuff that was just like inconsistent, and it could have been done better.
This was literally a modern day witch trial. They literally got convicted because of the way they looked, because of the music that they listened to. Because Damon even was writing down lyrics from songs that he liked, and they used
And poems. It was Shakespeare too.
It's Shakespeare, and they used that. So it's just this thing.
They're
is
like,
sad.
you wrote this, so you mean this? He was like, no, that's William Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And then they didn't fact check it. No one fact checked who it from. They were just like, no, this is you.
Yeah.
Like, but it's Shakespeare. Like, now we know that because we had to read a game of Shakespeare in school. But
Yeah.
back then, no one read Shakespeare like that, so they thought, oh no, this is him.
Yeah.
Shakespeare is very dark, by the way.
Oh yeah. So, well, that's the case. Very sad all the way around. I'd like you to leave. Who do you think the boys did it? Who did you think did it? Leave that in the comment. And yeah, we'll see you in our next video.